Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob, joined as always by Carver, but it's not just us. We're back with the Super Show, although we're actually bringing it to our channel this time, teaming up with the boys from 50 Plus Döner, Jake and B-flem. How are you guys doing? Jake, I'll let you start. I don't want everyone talking over each other. How's it going, man?
Yeah, we'll do a home and away with you guys.
And B-flem, you're new to our show, although obviously a member of 50 Plus Döner. So how are you doing, man? Welcome. It's good to have you.
It's good to be here. You know, I feel like it's been a long time coming, being the alleged Dortmund side of the show. So, no, it's good to be here. I'm happy. We had a great talk on our show, so I'm happy to keep it going over here.
Why do we keep bringing Jake back? He doesn't even like Dortmund. We should just have B-flem on every time.
I don't know.
Are you kidding me? As an angel investor in the show, I have an artifact, a B04 artifact, and this is how I'm treated on the
It was like one of 5 BVB pod shirts, and 3 of those 5 are like the samples that Carver and I have, and then you bought one, and maybe one other person bought one before we had to take them down. Well, we're not allowed to talk about that. Carver, how are you doing, man? It's been a little over a week because I bailed on Thanksgiving.
It wasn't a month, like we said, since our last episode, and despite the depressing weather outside, despite the early bow out of the Pokal, like you mentioned, we have 2 iconic guests, so I'm doing very, very well. Very excited to chat more Dortmund.
Nice. So we are I do want to talk just Bundesliga and Pokal, everything German football in general. Since we have you guys on, we'll talk about that. We are going to talk about the 2 Leverkusen matches. We'll talk about Dortmund so far this year and the Bundesliga, sadly not the Pokal anymore, and the Champions League. But first, I do want to hear a little bit about just 50 Plus Döner in general. I know, Jake, you've been on the show a lot, so people might be familiar with you. But if there's anyone tuned into 50 Plus Döner yet, if they want, just give us a little, like, how did you guys start? How did you guys get together? And yeah, it was kind of the inspiration for starting your guys' show.
I guess I could start. So I actually did it because I was talking to myself on Twitter just every day about the Bundesliga during the pandemic, especially that big missed opportunity by the league when the Bundesliga was the only league going on, and they absolutely squandered it. And I just was stewing and like, man, they do not know how to pump up this league. And I don't know why I thought I could be the person to do that, but I gave it a shot. So I started it in, I think, 2021, and have been going for the most part every single year. And there was a year that I didn't, and B-flem saved the show. If B-flem wants to do his arc.
Yeah, so I started as a viewer from the jump on 50 Plus Döner. So while he was doing his own thing in starting in 2021 through the years and growing the show, I did my own personal streams on Twitch. And, you know, so I guess that was the angle of him seeing that I do content, and I've been a long-time viewer of the stream. Of course, we're friends in real life as too. But, you know, he approached me, you know, after taking a break from the show for a little bit, like, yo, you want to revive the show with me? I was like, I'm so down. I miss 50 Plus Döner. I need it back in my life, and I'll be happy to be the help get it back. So I joined in about 2024, started the 24 season. And, you know, it's just blossomed from there. We've had a lot of great opportunities with the show, and, you know, I'm happy to have brought Jake back into the show, and then also been happy to be a part of it.
Since you are a Dortmund fan, you can tell us about your Dortmund arc too.
I started as a Dortmund fan in my high school years. I want to say around 2016, 2017-ish. I was looking for a soccer team to kind of follow outside of, you know, the local team, Chicago Fire. There was a little bit of brand recognition with Dortmund, partly because I was playing FIFA, but also partly because of like familial connections that I can't really mention because it would dox me. But so I had that connection. I recognized that, and I was like, yeah, okay, let me kind of delve into this, see what this team is about. And from there, I just fell in love with mainly the fan atmosphere, what the team stood for back then, the culture around the team, and also the fact that they weren't like perennial winners. Like, it would have been nice to have chosen a team that wins all the time, given my current track record of, teams that don't normally win. But, I don't think I'd change that decision at all. It's it come to identify with Dortmund, on several things, especially with like the fan culture and all that stuff. So
This is all alleged too, by the way.
this is
Right,
all alleged
right.
too, by the
Yeah.
way. Yes. This is what I would say if I were a Dortmund fan, but I am unbiased as I am on the show now.
I've been trying to tell myself in the last few years as the team and just like the brand and company makes more and more questionable decisions, to say the least. I'm trying to identify more with the fan culture, like you mentioned, which is still very vibrant, very well organized too, which is, I mean, a serious compliment that I think people don't give Dortmund fans enough credit for. And this last game against Leverkusen in the Pokal is a brilliant example, having one of the most just bold and physically large scale protests I've seen in such a long time. So well done. I have no idea how they even get that in the stadium, for God's sake. And then just a few minutes after that, they're still able to do another glorious, beautiful tifo representing the club of Borussia Dortmund as well. So just, there's so many other great examples in recent history alone, but that's something that I'm trying to identify myself, I guess, more with.
With that, I'm glad you brought that up, and I was going to ask you to talk about that anyways. But I think I've said this before when they've done kind of these protest tifos. One, I have appreciation that like it's allowed, because when you think about it, it's Dortmund Stadium. They can allow what they want and don't want in. So I appreciate that they still allow this. They like, because that it takes like coordinate rigging with the stadium crews and all this. So like there's a coordinated effort there. So I appreciate that they let them speak their voice, even if it's against them in some instances. Like I appreciate that they still let that happen. And then again, on the fan side, I appreciate that they're still there to support too, right? It's not just we're so mad and we're not showing up or anything. It's like, no, we're going to say what we feel like we need to say. And we're here to support the club in an amazing way too. And was there another match recently? I feel like it was a Dortmund match where it was quiet for the first 10 minutes or something like that. Or am I thinking of different?
I think it was like
a Dortmund
2
match.
weeks ago, because a bunch of other teams did that too. I think it was like fresh off of the Leipzig meeting or whatever it was.
And I think what makes the sort of supporters base even more badass is they don't need the approval of the club to do those things either. They just, protests are supposed to be disruptive. They're supposed to be uncomfortable. And, I don't even think if the club tried to say no, they would still do it anyway. That's not only the passion, but again, the organization that these people have to really voice themselves and make themselves heard, despite, corporations a lot of times trying to suppress that.
So along the same lines a little bit, Jake, sorry, I was going to come to you anyways, but back to 50 Plus Döner. And I know you talked about kind of just amping up the league in that time where they maybe could have done a better job, but what drew you to, German football in general?
Well, there's another Dortmund connection now all of a sudden, because my grandfather is from the city. He died in the city. He was one of the original, like early members. Like at his funeral, he had a few Dortmund staff and players show up. But that's how I kind of like got into German soccer, and then studying abroad there, which started the Köln part, because I was in a nearby town called Bonn. That definitely, I think that solidified it, of like, when you see this fan culture up close and personal, that really, really gets you hooked onto it for sure. Like seeing it is obviously big, like the tifo and the displays and whatnot today, but like seeing all the hard work that goes into it, seeing like even on away games, like your local bar being packed with full of people, and just like getting to know people and their stories of why they love the club so much. I think that stuff really sticks with you. Like, of course, seeing Dortmund on TV, like that's already infectious enough, but like when you get to know the people in the stands, like that just puts another part of it. And seeing the sacrifices they make to make the club big, seeing how open they are, like I think there are varying degrees of openness with German soccer people, but I think for the most part, when an American just materializes out of nowhere with the same amount of passion they do, they respect it for the most part. And yeah, just all of that combined. And I think the one thing that is not talked about enough is how open and accepting the U.S. fan base of Bundesliga is, because we've had Dusseldorf people show up at the Köln bar and everyone's cool. You see a Gladbach supporter at a fire tailgate and you talk shit for like 2 seconds, but then, you're just happy to see another Bundesliga fan. So I think all of that just kind of keeps the love of the league going.
Especially when there isn't great coverage to begin with, right? I mean, ESPN prices only continue to skyrocket, and there's very little to no coverage for a lot of games, little to no pregame, postgame. And so you build that community yourself, and I think a lot of people in this country and around the world in general have done a great job at that.
All right, well, let's get into some Dortmund. I think it's about time, or we talk about both these matches. I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings about it. If we would have recorded before the Pokal match, I would have been pretty excited. And then after the Pokal match, I'm like, I don't know how I feel anymore. But we go away at Leverkusen. Jake, I'm sorry, I'd say we a lot on this show.
I can necessarily turn off my mic for this part.
All right, not necessarily trying to associate you with that, but it's just a forced habit. So when I say we, I mean me and Carver, B-flem if you want to be in, and Jake's over there. Dortmund goes away to Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. We knew going to this match it was going to be difficult. We knew it was one where kind of need a result. I think we just had some disappointing draws and a couple other results here and there where I was starting to think, maybe we're just average right now. Even I feel like we're going okay, but how things have been going lately, this was a win that we needed. I would have been happy with the draw, I think, and advancing in the Pokal. And now I'm like, I don't know which result. I don't know if what result I'd rather take right now. The league win is good, but dropping out on the Pokal, not as much. But let's start quickly on we might go back and forth with these games a little bit, but I do want to start with the away win and the lineup. Kobel in goal, Schlotterbeck, Anton, and Anselmino getting the start as our center backs, with Svensson, our wing back, Mecha and Sabitzer in the middle, Rierson, our right wing back, with Brandt, Adeyemi up top, and Girassi at the very top. And going through that, just shout out Anselmino. We know he's a young center back, came in from Chelsea. He made his debut, I think, coming in like 2 days after signing for the club. He made his debut and had a pretty good showing. Got injured. Hadn't been able to see him a ton, but he gets his start in this match and opens the scoring too, getting his first Dortmund goal with that header. Yeah, Carver, I'll toss it to you for your first thoughts on this game.
Yeah, they're fresh off a win against Manchester City, which made me a bit more nervous given how we were, we've been pretty stable for the most part, but in the last few weeks we've been unable to break some teams down that are varying in quality. So against a team like Leverkusen, who is in pretty decent form, they really came out after the sacking of Ten Hag, and they've done a good job of stabilizing themselves for their season so far. So I had some nerves flowing through me, and we were able to obviously get the win here, and Anselmino thankfully getting a great header there from the set piece. There was definitely some differences that you saw from Leverkusen between the Pokal and the Bundesliga match, but in this one, I think we were able to find ourselves deadly on set pieces again, and Adeyemi has been one of the very few bright spots in our front line these past few weeks. Brent, I'm not sure he was really deserving of a contract extension at this point. Girassi, we can talk about him. That's a whole conversation. Adeyemi, for all of his faults and inconsistencies, I think he's been one of the very few sparks to get our team going in these games these past few weeks.
B-flem?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off that, I feel like we'll get into the Pokal game, but I feel like it was a tale of two different philosophies for Dortmund. In this game in particular, it was definitely more of a counterattacking vibe, and it worked a lot better. Obviously, we scored 2 goals in this one. Firstly, it's great to see Anselmino not just get involved in attack, but he is great defensively as well. I think that was one of the transfers of the summer, and we should definitely. I know it's just like a loan, no option to buy, but we should be pestering Chelsea.
Absolutely.
But if we're just looking at the stats of this one, Leverkusen had 63% of the possession. They controlled a lot of the ball. They had more shots. They had more on target. They controlled the corners, the free kicks. It was really, to me, it was just Dortmund playing. To me, Dortmund always played better on the counterattack, especially if you're exploiting the speed of your Adeyemis, maybe your Brandt if he can get a few steps on a defender. Girassi not as fast, but he'll drop deep and then start a counter move and then trail and get in position to get a good shot. Rierson and Svensson on the wings are also very dangerous, and I think we saw that with a lot of the Dortmund attacks in this game. Even though the stat sheet doesn't show that we necessarily peppered the goal. I feel like there was more quality in attack, not being on the ball as much in this game.
Like Carver said, we're oscillating between the two games, but it was definitely interesting seeing both teams kind of try what each other did. Like I think in that first game, like Leverkusen was the one trying to pepper the goal. Like I think instead of possession, my favorite stat is actually corners, because I think that shows like kind of like the rhythm of attacking. And Leverkusen had 10 corners in that game, so they were like really pressing. But as B-flem said, like Dortmund was just really key on counters. Like, they like Leverkusen had to go back and respect kind of like the effort that's being put on that. And then in the Pokal game, Dortmund had 11 corners and Leverkusen had 0. So really like a tale of two games. It's interesting to see Dortmund kind of throw it out once that first goal went in and just senselessly kind of throw things at the keeper. But honestly, to kind of provide perspective, I think it's a little more important to keep up with the league table right now, because it's very packed together up top. I feel like there's like 7 teams that have the same amount of points currently. So I think it was kind of more important to get that league win, because you don't know how the cards are going to fall at the end of the season if it's still this packed. That's one of those games you look back and you're like, we should have beat Leverkusen. Like, we could have used up 3 points. So I know the Pokal loss is disappointing, but I think if you kind of compare the two games, it's a little more important to stay up to date with the league table.
Yeah, we're able to leapfrog them on this one too.
Yeah.
And there's been a handful of meetings between us and Leverkusen these past like year and a half, 2 years, where we should have been beating them. It's just they get those 90th plus minute equalizers, and we unfortunately are unable to get the triple points on them.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Something where we come back at the end of the season and we win the league somehow. I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. But if we win the league, we're like, oh yeah, of course we'll take that away win at Leverkusen. That's the one that did it. But then at the same time, we've been saying for years, it's like, I just want to win the Pokal, because it feels like that is the most easy, not easy, it's maybe easy. It's our best chance at a trophy, right? So that's where we're going on the Pokal. It's really disappointing. I hate when these games line up where you play the same team in a week. It always happens in Open Cup, which is the worst. Like, get it together, United States.
That's my favorite. I love when there's two games like consecutively. It's so funny.
God, it's the worst. But yeah, it is interesting looking at the stats. As soon as you brought up the corners in the first one, like I had the corners in the second match ready to go, because like, oh, but you went there, so I appreciate it. But yeah, looking at the table now, purely in the Bundesliga, of course, we're sitting in third on 25 points. Leverkusen in fourth on 23 points, and Bayern's still on top with 34. So gonna need to do some work to catch them. The point where I think right now, where I'm like, maybe I'd rather win that Pokal match right now, is because when you look at our season last year and how we were able to come back with Kovac, it's like, I know we can gain point. I know we can go on a hot streak if we need to. I mean, you don't want to rely on that, but I don't want to say I think you're right, because I'm still so hurt about the Pokal, but it is good to get this away win, especially at Leverkusen, and especially with some of the other performances that we've been having where we've been dropping points. And I mean, we scored, Adeyemi's got the second goal in the 5th minute. And then when they scored in the 83rd, I thought it was going to happen again. I was like, oh God, we're going to draw. Like, we're going to let another one in. I had very little faith, because this is the point where I started to just think about St. Pauli. And then the Heidenheim, what was the last match where we drew late? I was just
Hamburg.
Hamburg, that's what it was.
Juventus too.
I was like, it's going to happen again. And now I'm going to get sad. I'm going to Christmas. I'm going to go into the winter break, and I'm going to be sad because Dortmund is doing this to me again.
And Stuttgart too. It's happened a handful of times. I really do got to say, I mean, my opinions of Kovac have been so mixed these past few days. I mean, really, I guess it kind of bleeds into the last few weeks, but like, I initially had my notes that I really respected how bold he was to take Guirassy off at the 60th minute. I mean, with his form, you could argue, he's pretty gassed with how many minutes he's been playing lately too. And he's been picking up some knocks here and there throughout the season, but there had to have been that change in a game like this. And I respected the courage that he had to actually make a change. Silva was a very big bright spot of this game. Obviously ended up setting up Adeyemi in the assist, but his movement off the ball, his energy is exactly what we needed. Garcia at times in these two games just kind of looked like a corpse on the field. But then you flip to this game and Kovac, I don't know, just the post game, during the game, lacking so much courage, the ambition, sitting back at times, playing on the counter. And then at the end of the game, just you could look at his reaction for getting knocked out of the Pokal or whatever, but instead of looking at this team of wanting to be title contenders, wanting to push the limits and be bold and play brave and win trophies, his answer to where do we go from here is just, we want to be a good football team, we want to be a good Bundesliga team, and that was pretty much verbatim, right? And it shocks me that we go back into the spring and he talked about wanting to build on the momentum we have, to build on the stability and improve the team. It looks like we're very complacent of where we are right now, and we're wanting to get that top 4 finish, and that's kind of it. And that rubbed me the wrong way here, not just again with the post game, but just the lack of courage in games to make decisions like Girassi earlier in the season.
I think watching the reactions, just the on-field reactions, whether it's Kovac or all the players, it looked like they knew they should have had this. Not like, obviously we had all the corners. I don't want to say like we had all these chances, but you could tell just the disappointment on the players, and you could tell like this is our chance to get a trophy. And I guess my counter question my counter reaction to him, like, we just want to be a good football team. Like, my takeaway from that can be, do we just need to stabilize? Like, obviously Dortmund wants to be a successful team where we're winning trophies and competing, but like with we've had some success in the midst of chaos the last few years, but I think there's a point where we can say like, we just need to kind of get back on track and stabilize before we can like truly rebuild, before we can actually be that team that's contending. And I'm just curious, B-flem, I'll go to you. Like, any thoughts on, can we realistically compete for anything? Maybe we're going to go make a run in the Champions League again, or do we need to see some like stabilization? And I don't want to like belittle Dortmund at all by saying that, but it's been a pretty chaotic last few years too.
I mean, it's hard to even think that you can compete in anything right now, because like we're 9 points behind Bayern, which like a lot of teams in the Bundesliga are at least like 7 points behind Bayern. So that's not like a surprising thing. Even though we're scoring almost 4 goals a game in the Champions League, we saw with the Manchester City game is that we're not going to be able to compete against the big teams if we keep playing the way we are. So, in my opinion, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to say that we can compete in anything. Now, the Champions League is going to be like, okay, can you secure a top 8? It's going to be a tough go of it towards the end, because I think we have Inter and Tottenham and, a couple other pretty solid teams going into there. But as soon as you hit the round of 16 or whatever, it's a crapshoot. Can you perform well in 2 games? Which we've seen with City, they're going to have to turn something around in order to be able to do that. So, I mean, in either league, they just have to get either lucky or have a fire lit under their ass, because the way they're playing right now, it's like top 4, or at least it's comfortable this year, but like...
Yeah.
We've been talking about stabilizing and rebuilds for so many years now. We said it on the show for so many years. I thought Kovac had us in a spot this summer to... it doesn't fall directly on him. I think a lot of the blame so far is probably on the squad planning as well. It's shared amongst the management in general here at the club. But I thought Kovac brought us to a really good spot to build on that and actually compete for something here this season. I don't think it's that crazy to think about something like that. I mean, now you could argue there's going to be a little bit more wiggle room with next summer. I'm really hoping to get Niklas Süle off the books. He's making in the double digits at this point for the millions of euros, and to say he's been a disappointment is not saying enough. So there can be plenty of that investment shifted over to players like Ansel Minho, smaller markets where plenty of teams I mentioned before in the Bundesliga abroad are investing in some quality players for very little money. And then we can make a run, because this team is, the depth is kind of questionable at times, whether it's for injuries and runs of form. Leverkusen, I think it was in the Man City game, didn't have like any players besides Nathan Tella that was over the age of 20 in that Champions League game. And there wasn't that many players in the first Bundesliga game either that they were able to bring on, and still they can chug along, even after sacking a manager a few weeks into the season. So there's definitely some blame to shift, and just in general, some other nooks and crannies to look at in terms of the top down, the management and the players too.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, like bringing Kovac in and hopefully being able to compete for something. Unfortunately, I think I already said it, but what we could realistically compete for is the Pokal, and now that is out looking at this match. But Jake, I want to toss it over to you again too. Like, any thoughts on kind of what we've been talking about with Dortmund and needing to stabilize, or are we a team that's balanced enough to be doing better than what they have been over the last few years? Or like, where do you see Dortmund at this current state?
Yeah, I think B-flem said something about this being a little stable. I don't think it is, because 7th place currently is at 21 points and Dortmund's at 25. So, and like, it's early in the season, obviously, and like, I think people are kind of waiting for Hoffenheim to kind of stop overperforming. Who knows if they're not going to? It's still something where, I think being top 4 is very important. I don't think that should ever not be on the table for a team like Dortmund, because when you talk about stabilization, nothing would destabilize this team worse than being like in European Conference League or something like that. And also there is the rumblings about Schlotterbeck. I don't know how true those are or not, but I think like when you think about stabilizing, you also have to kind of keep the cards that you have right now that are working. So I don't know. It's Dortmund's always a hard team to kind of like figure out what their goals are, because this is a team that could fight for first if they really wanted to. The resources are there. The scouting is still better than a lot of other teams. Like, you do have that poll going into the summer of like, if there is a good player on Eintracht Frankfurt or something, like, I don't think Dortmund's sitting there like, how can we get them attracted? Like, Dortmund's an attractive place to play as a player no matter what. It's just waiting for whatever coach or whatever board member or something is going to get this team serious. And I think like when you hear Kovac say we just want to be a good team, like, I think that would raise my eyebrows if I was a Dortmund fan, because I think you should be mad about being bounced out in round of 16. But I don't know. Like, it's so hard to figure out what Dortmund wants to do here. And you're right. Like, Bayern would really have to slow down now, and there's still the other teams around you with not many points off. I don't know. But I think like what you guys said, like, figuring out like getting players that are not a Nicolas Sule, and you don't strike out on these teams, so that you can go into either next season or make a run this season. But I'm not sure. This is always the weirdest team to kind of figure out. You guys chose a very interesting team, to say the least.
But the fans and the supporters.
I'm not going to spend much more time just shitting on the club or anything. But another thing that came to mind too, as Jake was talking, because he brought up Frankfurt, is like, there hasn't been much youth development here in the past few years either. I mean, Terzic wasn't too huge on that. Kovac clearly has Shahin too. And Kovac seems to be a coach that's really shutting the door on that as well. And he wasn't the person making these decisions. But like, you look at a team like Frankfurt, Ansgar Knauf, Namdi Collins, both regular Bundesliga starters, both players that are actually performing pretty well at this level. They're not world beaters by any means, but both players I think you could argue Dortmund could need at the moment. And there's been a handful of other instances that we bottled as well. I mean, you could argue Moukoko too. Now, he's got his own thing going on. We don't know where his trajectory for his career is going to end up. But plenty of examples like that where, like, we're supposed to be a club that's, giving a direct pipeline of tremendous opportunity for these young players, these smaller markets, and, living that dream. And we're not seeing that at all, really, these past few years either. And I think that's doing a number on our depth and also just our overall performances.
And I think kind of to add to that, ever since, the Moukoko experience kind of failed and then Bellingham and Haaland left, it feels like the team has not really had an identity on the pitch, which I think is probably going to be the most important thing for them to find any sort of consistency. Because, like, we saw it in these past 2 games. Like, sometimes they'll want to be a counterattacking team and it'll be successful. Won't be successful against every team. But, it worked against Leverkusen. All of a sudden we turn around and we're controlling 70% of the possession, putting 15 shots up, and we cannot by a goal to save our life. So, it starts with the top and the coach, and then also the players trying to get people that, complement each other. Because me personally, I don't know how well you have a pacey winger like Adeyemi, and then, just like a poacher, kind of slower drop back style striker like Arasi right now. Those two normally do not meld too well. So, just trying to find an identity on the pitch is going to be a huge thing for them going forward. Like, how do you want to play football is what they have to figure out.
And behind that front line, like, who do you have outside of Adeyemi and Girassi? You have, and it's been building for quite a while now. Again, going back to Terzic and what he liked out of his players and what he wanted to identify and sign. You have workhorses, you have fast players, you have physical players, and it's all pretty redundant at this point, right? Like, Maxi Bayer comes on, he's not offering too much as of late. It's been kind of disappointing this season in general. I mentioned Brandt already, how much of a big disappointment he's been on this season. He's our number 10, for God's sake. At times, he's our captain. And one of his last few touches in this Pokal game was utter shit and went out for a throw-in. There's no creativity there underneath those two strikers. And once they're out of bad form, and, Adeyemi's pretty inconsistent for the most part, I hope he can finally find his true form and continue to build on that. I've been saying that for a few years, and Girassi is kind of a toss-up at this point. It's like, what are we doing here going forward? Are we surprised that we're not scoring many goals?
Well, on that note, I will take a slight pivot to a competition where we are scoring a shit ton of goals. we do have Hoffenheim on the weekend, and then we are playing in the Champions League on Wednesday. This is next week, because today's Wednesday as we're recording. Jeez, sorry guys. Next week at Bodo Glimt, where maybe, I don't know, we could score 8 goals. Could be another one of those Adeyemi hat trick nights. I'm hoping for the best. But yeah, Champions League, we are kind of, you have that Juventus game in there, and B-flem, you mentioned the Manchester City loss, which was I think a bit humbling. But besides that, we scored 4 goals in I think every single Champions League match, with the exception of the Man City one. Or I know we're sitting pretty high in the Champions League table right now. I don't put too much stock in that, because that thing is crazy and can change at any second after any match. And then I don't really know how the draw works out anyways. Champions League. Is this our best shot at a trophy, and how serious can we get? Or how? No, I'm just kind of messing. I don't really think so. But what do you see for the rest of the Champions League with Dortmund? Jake, I'll go to you first on this one.
Oh, I don't know why you went with me first, but
because I went to B-flem every time, so I just want to throw you on the spot.
Yeah, Champions League is interesting. Like you said, like they're sitting pretty at 6. Like that table looks pretty big until it doesn't. So. Even like they're 10 points, 6 is still out of the whole like qualification stuff. So they really can't screw around. I'm not sure how many. I think there's only 1 game left, right? Like
we've got 3 games in the Champions League left.
Yeah.
Okay,
2 of them
so
are
I'd
at
be
home.
sweating a little bit. Well, one is against Bodo, who they have 2 points in general. So I would hope Dortmund doesn't mess that one up. And then the other one is, I think, Tottenham you play, and then Inter. So those are some pretty tough games to close out when there's that little of a gap. That means you stay in Champions League and you bounce out. But I think Champions League is a good chance for Kovac to kind of make up for the whole staying top 4 thing, because you don't know if this is going to be a good chance for a trophy or not. But why not go for it? I think the venom that they didn't play with Leverkusen, they could take that into Champions League and kind of show their fans and themselves that, like, we do want to be considered a top team, not just top 4. We want to be a top team, like, in Europe. And the way they go about preparing for the rest of these games, whether it is in the knockout stages or whatnot, I think we'll say a lot, especially in regards to how the Pokal went. So, I don't know. We'll see how Dortmund does. Like, really, those are 2 tough games to end. Like, I know Tottenham's all over the place and Inter is whatever, but those are games you could drop and find yourself all of a sudden out of the competition. But we'll see how prepared and like how motivated this team can get. And to go back to the previous conversation, you just need someone in your team who's not okay with losing, whether it's the coach, whether it's the higher up, whether it's a player. And I think we need to see who that is for Dortmund in these next few Champions League games and to close out the rest of the year. So I am very interested to see how this team will be doing for all of those.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at the Champions League as a Dortmund fan, because I think from the outside, a lot of people who are just watching Dortmund, maybe when they're catching the odd Champions League fan, I'm thinking like, what is the world and what are people looking at Dortmund in general? Because us as Dortmund fans have all these frustrations because we think about the league and the Bundesliga, but then you look at the Champions League table, and this was the same last year, where we're sitting in sixth behind Arsenal, PSG, Bayern, Inter, Real Madrid, Dortmund. And Jake, as you just mentioned, like we want to be a top team in Europe. That looks pretty good. It looks like we're actually doing that. It's unfortunate that we had a pretty hefty loss to Man City, which that was a match where we probably had the most eyes on Dortmund as a club, if you're trying to think of just people coming in and supporting this club. And then we're also sitting above the likes of Man City, Liverpool, Leverkusen, Barcelona, and some, like, as far as big name teams go. But again, this table is weird, and that might not matter when it really comes down to it. But I think that is a positive thing for Dortmund. I also, unfortunately, I would say to our, like, not to our benefit, but the board looks at that too, or these people in charge, and be like, but look, we're one of the best teams in Europe because we're in the top 8 in the Champions League. But it's like, but we can't get our shit together in the Bundesliga, and that's kind of what we need to sustain ourselves. I don't know. It's weird. And that's what the Terzic era was too, right? When we were just flying in the Champions League and then we got 5th in the Bundesliga, and we're like, I'm so mad and also so hyped at the same time. This is just my life.
For this specific matchup against Bodo Glimt, it is one of those cases where Dortmund cannot sleep on their opponent. They have to stay on the gas. Not even to say that because, like, just to keep their focus or anything, but Bodo Glimt is deceptively competitive. You know, despite the fact that they only have 2 points, those points came against Tottenham and Slavia Prague, and then they haven't lost any of their other games by more than 2 goals. So they will compete against you. They are going to go out there and fight. That's what they're going to, it's their first, I'm pretty sure it's their first appearance in the Champions League. So they're going to come out and fight and make you earn your wins. So Dortmund's going to have to come out with the same energy that they have in most of their other Champions League matches in order to come out on top in this one. So I am concerned if we see anything similar to how we play Leverkusen. I think Glint would be able to catch us sleeping in that regard. But as long as we keep our Champions League form, because it seems like our form is just contingent on which competition we're playing in at this rate. So, as long as we keep that Champions League form, I think they'll be okay, at least for this match. And then we'll see how they come out after the winter break going into Tottenham and Inter.
And the games that you mentioned that they did lose here in the Champions League, they're against good opponents too. And Monaco and Juventus both only lost by 1 goal. So, and Dortmund tend to play to the level of their opponent, whether that's a good thing on the day or a bad thing. Like, we'll be in the Pokal playing a second division team and struggle, or even in the Bundesliga against a relegation side and struggle. And then in the Champions League, we'll be playing up to the level of Real Madrid the next day or Manchester City on the next day. This most recent meeting between the two is not a good example, but that's kind of the pattern that we see of Dortmund here in different competitions. Like you guys have both mentioned, can they find the motivation? Can they find the clarity and the clinical ability in front of goal? Because there are times where we're generating chances, and then there are times where we're generating little to no chances. It's kind of a toss-up here on a day-to-day basis for this team at this point. But there's still plenty of time to change things in this next month. There's going to be a bit of a break. We're going to hopefully see some changes here in the squad, and I just need to see more from Kovac and these players. There needs to be more, because players like Schlotterbeck, Jake mentioned it before with the rumblings of him. I don't know how much validity there are in those reports, but we have been saying for years he's a quality center back. He's one of the best number 4s, really, or number 5s, really, almost in the whole world. And I'm surprised at this point it took so long for major clubs to come for him. So there needs to be a bit more incentive for him to want to stay here. There needs to be more winners in the team and just ambition in general to actually go and achieve and not continue slipping down the path of complacency.
Yeah, that's something I just thought about. I don't know if we want to get into. I haven't been looking too much about transfers, but I was looking ahead of the winter break, which is coming up. But hopefully this is a time where Dortmund can go out and get some more players. Like, I think in the summer we got a few, but we're like, I think we need some more, or definitely some more in certain areas. So when we say it time and time again, it's like, if this club wants to be serious, Jake, you're like, what does this club want to be? What do you guys want to do? It's like, I don't know. We could make some statement signings and find out real quick, but I don't know if they're going to do that. So it'll be an interesting window coming up, I think. But just 4 games before the winter break. If you're new to the Bundesliga, I know we always got new people tuning in all the time. So if you're new to the Bundesliga, we got the winter break coming up. Before that, Hoffenheim this weekend. I already talked about Bodo Glimt next week with Freiburg the following Sunday. And then we end on Friday against Gladbach before we take a little break.
That was at home as well. 3 out of our last 4 games are at home. So this is definitely a great opportunity to build momentum.
The Arena Derby to close things out before Christmas. Let's shift a little bit from Dortmund, unless you guys have anything else to add. But I just want to talk Bundesliga and German football in general. I was going to talk Bundesliga first, is how I put it in the order of my notes. But as we're coming off the Pokal, what were some exciting matches or some kind of exciting storylines you guys see for the rest of the tournament? Because even if you're a Dortmund fan, I think the Pokal is always exciting to watch. You might not have Dortmund to watch the rest of the Pokal, but I think it's a tournament. If you're just a German football fan in general, you need to be watching the Pokal.
This was kind of actually a pretty chill round. I was very surprised. But what I will say in looking at is I think outside of Kiel and Hertha, like the rest of them are giants, right? So I think it's interesting coming from it on that angle. I feel like before there's always been kind of like an underdog angle coming into the last like 8 or 4 left. But now it just seems like it's kind of like the big dogs, like Bayern, like Stuttgart, like Leipzig, like Leverkusen. Like one of those teams are going to have to get rid of the other, you know? So I think it's interesting in that way. Like I love the like Bielefeld story and I love all of that, but at the end of the day, also, I want to see Bayern versus Leipzig, right? Like for a spot in the final, or Freiburg versus Stuttgart, you know what I mean? Something like that. So, and I don't know, like Hertha's playing their tushies off right now. Like you don't know if the underdog story will still come up, but they also have incredible league form too. Also, if you're not keeping up with the Zweite, Hertha is coming back from the dead, and I think people should be a little more worried about that. But yeah, it's a good storyline. Like I'm very interested to see what this draw will be. One of the big teams is going to have to take out another. Like I think that's inevitable. Good stuff all around. Who knows what will happen in the rest of the tournament?
All right, who would you hate to see win? I mean, there's 2, obviously. And then who do you want to see win? Or I guess final. Who would you want to see in the final? Maybe that's a better question.
I know I was attacked and saying this was a derby, but I know they don't like each other. Like Freiburg Stuttgart as a final would be pretty sick. I think we need another like morally okay final, right? Like last year was pretty chill.
Right.
Like I don't want like a Leipzig Bayern final. Like nobody wants that.
Oh, that's the worst.
Like let's get like a Stuttgart Hertha or a Hertha Kiel,
A Kiel
like something
St.
like
Pauli.
that. Yeah. Oh yeah, St. Pauli's still in there.
St. Pauli's
too.
still in it.
Right.
That was going to be
they
one of the
knocked
things
out
I
Gladbach.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Is that St. Pauli is just like night and day between the Pokal and the league right now.
They still haven't won a league game, I think, like since their best start ever. But yeah, I want to see a morally okay final, and up until that, whatever happens. But I just don't want a Bayern Leipzig final. Like make them draw each other the next round.
It's like,
It's the furthest Bayern has made it in the Pokal in a while, isn't
I know.
it?
Congratulations, Bayern! You finally did it.
Oh. Yeah, it's like we're trying to make German football cool, not see Leipzig and Bayern in the final of the Pokal.
Yeah, nobody wants that. Not a single soul on this planet actually wants that. Not even Bayern fans.
B-flem, you got anything to add on the Pokal?
But yeah, I kind of touched on the 2 things that I wanted to touch on, but just to go a little bit more in depth, St. Pauli looking night and day different from Pokal and the league. Like Jake has said, they haven't won a game since, their best league start ever. Up until the Pokal when they just beat Gladbach 2-1. So, I'm interested to see if that form will stay, depending on who they play. I don't have great hope, but I think overall, the way the season has gone for St. Pauli, they'll want to cherish it for as long as possible. But whenever it ends, I think they would call it a success, just to make it into the final 8 of this competition. And then moving on to Bayern finally somewhat figuring it out, even though all of their games have been like 1-score games. I think it's just the side effect of them winning everything except the one Arsenal game. But they're going to be a tough out for any of these other teams, even given their Pokal history as of recent. I'm interested to see next year if they crash out again, because it's like once every blue moon at this rate that they actually have a good Pokal run, and then next time they'll lose in like the second round. But, this is a dangerous treble territory for them right now, I want to say, which is scary for the league, especially since I don't know if they were the last team to win a treble in Europe, but I think Real Madrid has probably done it recently. But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on for them. That's definitely trouble watch for Bayern.
And when we talk about things nobody wants to see, I think that's probably on the top of the list.
Carver, you got...
It's been once in a blue moon since we made a serious run in the Pokal too. I feel like we've been out of the round of 16 here a few years in a row now. Now, granted, we've had some pretty unfortunate drawings. To have Frankfurt away and then the very next draw get Leverkusen is some shit luck. And then obviously the year before that, we had drawn Wolfsburg away in the second round. So these are teams at Dortmund at the end of the day. Where we are, Borussia Dortmund, we should be beating these teams. Not that it should be easy by any means, but we should have the firepower, the capacity to push onward. But very, very unfortunate draws here and early bows out of the cup. And it's something that, Jacob, you and I said at the beginning of the season that we want to see a deep run. It's been way too long for us to actually compete for a trophy that is very, realistic for us to actually get. That's a tangible goal that Dortmund is capable of actually achieving. So there needs to be, more ambition going forward for domestic competitions like this.
All right, let's shift to Bundesliga before we wrap up, and kind of same question a little bit. Like, what's been your top story so far? St. Pauli on the flip side, they're excited in the Pokal, maybe not so much in the Bundesliga. But yeah, passing it over to you guys for what's been your thoughts on the Bundesliga in general this year? Who's kind of a standouts, not Bayern, but maybe some exciting mid-table or lower level teams that you've enjoyed watching? Yeah, your thoughts on the league.
I'll go first, and I'll say it so that Jake doesn't have to sound biased. I see him reacting right now. If we're looking towards mid-table, one of the teams that has started off well, kind of petering out a little bit, but still hanging around mid-table is one FC Köln. They started out hot. They were without a defeat in their first three matches. They won. They started 3-1-2, or 3-2-1, I should say. Kind of leveling out now, but hanging out around mid-table, which I think is a good spot for a team that just got promoted from the second league. And then if we're looking at other teams in the table around them, Bremen, we both had them dead to rights at the start of the season. They're hanging around in ninth. They made a couple of transfers as the season started, namely Victor Boniface, which was the major one. But they've hung around. They're competing in most of their matches. They're hanging around with the teams around them, which is good for them. Definitely doing a lot better than we initially had thought of them. And then also just to mention, going around the people just below Bayern, I believe it's 7 points separating second and seventh right now, or actually 5 points separating second and seventh. So there's going to be a lot of movement as the season continues to go on and these teams clash against each other. There's a lot of storylines to be written. Hoffenheim is still hanging around here. Frankfurt in seventh, you'd think that they're going to figure out a way to climb back up above, your Stuttgarts and your Hoffenheims. Leverkusen, who started dead to rights, are back in third place after firing their manager. There's a lot of storylines to keep up with outside of, just Bayern running the table in the Bundesliga. So yeah, it's still a fun league despite the 8-point lead at the top of the table.
I think the big story is obviously Hoffenheim. I don't think a single person thought that these dudes would be fighting for a Champions League spot. Leipzig is showing that not being in Europe was actually a bad thing for everybody because now they go into every single week rested and ready to beat people up. Hamburg actually has been flying under the radar, but when you talk about recently promoted teams, this is a team that hasn't been in the first league in a very long time, and they're not the best team in the world, but they're definitely hanging around. And like you said, like mid-table for a recently promoted team is basically a Champions League spot, and they're staying above the teams that are below them. I want to throw up saying this, but Gladbach going from about to be relegated to all of a sudden comfortably mid-table has to be. They literally didn't score a goal for the first like 5 games of the season, and now they're beating people up all of a sudden. So that's got to be noted. Augsburg also is a very interesting story because they thought Sandro Wagner was going to be their big organizational turnaround, and now they're hovering back in their favorite place, 15th, without him.
Still outside of the relegation zone, too. Do we think that was too soon?
No, they should have fired him way sooner. I'm surprised he made it to December. And then, honestly, got to keep an eye on Heidenheim. I think everybody on Earth had Heidenheim in 18th as their prediction. And they're starting to show some lifeblood. They did only win like a few games. Like I think their win last week was their first one, but still, it was a win. And that's enough to put them in 16th. So bottom of the table is very interesting, especially Wolfsburg. I think Wolfsburg is another team that I don't know why they're down there, but like B-flem said, like I think you can pick an interesting storyline for basically any team on the table. Even Bayern, like Bayern's looking very unbeatable other than when they played the other unbeatable team in Europe. So a lot to keep an eye on, and I'm very interested to see how this season ends just as a totality.
I'm surprised neither of you mentioned Mainz, who I knew that they were in the relegation zone, but I didn't know just the scale of them having a single win so far at only 6 points.
That's because I've watched a Mainz match, so I understand why they're down there.
Just recently,
Amiri needs to get out of there, bro.
Did they sack Bo Henriksen today or yesterday? I'm getting my days mixed. It might have been today. Yeah, and you know, Mainz has been in the Bundesliga since 2009, if I'm not wrong. So I mean, they've been, you know, if not mid-table, they probably bounced up and down, but they've been even in European spots in recent years, and definitely have given Dortmund a run for their money plenty of times in the last few meetings. So very surprising to see them not only so low on the table, but dead last and by a few points as well. So relegation is a very, very serious possibility for them now too. So as the table continues to take shape, like you guys mentioned, there's, you know, very few points that separate the first team from the 7th place. Outside of that, you know, even in the relegation zone, like Jake, you mentioned there's plenty of stories to go around from top to bottom of the division.
Yeah, Mainz seems, granted, they did have a good season last year. They were a really good team, finished 6th. Mainz does seem like a way better team to all Dortmund fans just because what they have done to Dortmund, especially in recent years. But yeah, no, I think it is hard to just see Bayern continue to win and win and win. But that aside, like you said, the table from I think 2nd to 7th is really tight, and there's always interesting things to watch in the Bundesliga. I do understand, like, I always want to watch more Bundesliga, but it's tougher because they have like the 2 time slots where most teams play, and you can't always just watch them back to back to back. But it is an exciting league, and I don't know, maybe something crazy will happen. Maybe, probably not, but I would love to see a tighter race up top like the year. I mean, I would have preferred if Dortmund would have won the year Leverkusen went crazy, but at least that was more exciting to watch and see than Bayern just win it again. So I'd rather something a little more exciting at the very top of the table. But yeah, it is a great league to watch.
Be careful what you wish for. Leipzig isn't second.
Leipzig, if it's going to be any team, it's going to be Leipzig.
Literally.
Which
Very
is the worst
careful
part.
what you wish for.
Well, guys, this has been awesome. I mean, we're just kind of hitting an hour right now, and we don't want to keep you too long, especially because you guys are working double this week. And on that note, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. 50 Plus Döner as a whole, B-flem, as a Dortmund supporter, I'm putting it out there. It's official. You're on the BVB podcast. You're a Dortmund fan. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. If people want to check out your show and get connected, I mean, they might be listening to this episode on Thursday, and then maybe they can just roll this right into your guys' live show tonight. Am I correct in saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
We have to figure out what we're doing. We have to figure out what we're doing. But yes,
I don't want to put too much pressure on you guys.
I will say yes, and then we will figure out we'll be there tomorrow at 6 on Twitch and YouTube.
And I mean, if you happen to be listening to this or watching after Thursday night at 6 o'clock, just, I mean, give a quick shout for how people can find you and what you guys do on a regular basis.
Yeah, so I unhinged post on Blue Sky. That's one place you can look. Instagram, I occasionally remember we have the account. So you can follow us at 50 Plus Döner on Blue Sky, Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram. And maybe I'll even do a post on Threads. You never know.
Holy shit.
Remember Threads?
No, well, we really appreciate you guys hanging out. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, yeah, you guys are our boys.
B-flem, you got anything?
It's always a great conversation.
Anything you want to promote? Anything at all?
Anything at all.
50 Plus Döner is the second most famous Twitch stream that he does.
Throw it out there. Let's do it.
Okay, so outside of 50 Plus Döner, I do my own streams on twitch.tv/b__flem. I do variety games. I'm normally live every Friday. My schedule is turbulent, so it is just you'll catch me when you catch me. It's a little unhinged there too. It's slightly more unhinged than 50 Plus Döner, but it is a fun time. So anybody wants to come through, I'd be happy to chill with y'all.
3 days of B-flem. What more do you want? Awesome. Carver, you got anything to add before we go?
No, again, thank you both. Like you guys have both mentioned, you guys' show is awesome, and you guys are very fun to talk to and chat with and hang with. So thank you for spending your time with us, and the listener as well. Thank you as always for spending your time with us.
And I forgot to mention, but links to all of 50 Plus Döner, B-flem, everything. You can find that in the description of this episode. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you later.